I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. All Rutgers faithful, welcome to another edition of Night Watch. I'm your host, Larry K. What a great night for Rutgers and Rutgers fans and Rutgers basketball in general, man. The elusive big road win, the elusive conference win against a ranked team. We let it get away in Ohio State, or should I say the officials let it get away at Ohio State, but not tonight. Not tonight. Tonight, Rutgers comes out with the victory, 65-64 over number 1 Purdue. This is the second year in a row that the Scarlet Knights have taken down a number 1 ranked Purdue. Purdue had been sitting atop the rankings for several weeks. Rutgers topples them, but Rutgers does not topple them where you might expect. They were not toppled in Jersey Mike's Arena, a.k.a. throwback to the rack. They were not toppled there in front of a hostile crowd. They were toppled at home. The Scarlet Knights went into Mackey. The Scarlet Knights went into Purdue and knocked off the number 1 team, and they did it with relentless defense and a group effort in scoring and offense. And there's some specific aspects of that I want to discuss that I think are very important, and I'll get into that. First of all, look, everybody always, I always get told to stop crying, not on this podcast, but on other sports podcasts. I do stop crying about officiating when we lose. So I'll just go ahead and stay consistent and just, in a win, call out the officiating a little bit. It was kind of odd how some of those fouls were very ticky-tacky, very soft that were called against the Knights. And even at the end there, the review to put the 4 seconds back on, maybe hoping Purdue would have gotten the possession, but it was, conclusive that it was Rutgers' possession. But then Caleb, with the little shuffle, gets called for it, and Purdue winds up with the ball late. But, and then what they were trying to do. Purdue was definitely trying to lob the ball into Edey and try to get a foul or get him to just put it right in, which was the smart move. But fortunately for the Knights, it went a little bit high, and we were able to get the ball and maintain possession and close that game out, which is huge because if you're looking at the tournament and you're looking at other things in the future, you want that road win against a good opponent on your resume. And the fact that Rutgers now has that on their resume is a big point of emphasis going forward. But here's one of the things, like I've been saying, if you've been following Night Watch from the beginning of this season, and if you haven't yet, by the way, click subscribe if you're watching this. If you're into Rutgers hoops or Big Ten hoops in general, and just because I was complaining about the officials doesn't mean I'm taking anything away from a very good, very balanced Purdue team. I think all of our peer, teams in the Big Ten are formidable. We have some great games. We have some great arenas, some great fans, some great memories. It's a great conference to be a part of, particularly in basketball. So if you're a Purdue fan or just a Big Ten fan, a college hoops fan, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well if you so choose, and follow me for more Rutgers and just Big Ten hoops content. But that being said, I've been saying from the beginning of the year that I like the pieces in place on this team, but that on any given night for the first few months of the season, one person would show up and do the job you'd expect them to do, but then 2 other guys wouldn't show up. For instance, Cam Spencer, who's a great outside shooter and good mid-range shooter, would be dominant in one game where Cliff would be not playing as well down low. Then the next game, Cliff would be more dominant, but Spencer would be struggling, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the first game. I don't want to say the first. Maybe Indiana had a lot of this too. But the most recent game that I can think of off the top of my head where it was the most consistent group team effort I've seen. This was a picture of what this team can do, what this team can be, and what this team can accomplish if each individual player plays their role. And just to kind of point it out here, Cliff hit at least one. He hit the 1-3, which was nice, but he played tough defense. to the extent he was able to, because they were getting pretty soft down low with the officiating as the game went on. But he played tough defense. But most of all, what I loved about Cliff's game tonight was his presence on the boards. 6 rebounds, 12 points, 2 assists for Cliff. And I just felt like he was a constant presence underneath, be it clogging the lane, be it getting his hands up there and trying to snag a rebound, or knocking it to somebody else who could snag a rebound, or eating up Edey or one of the other big men so that somebody else could get their hands on the ball. I liked his presence down low, and there wasn't a lot of softness. There wasn't a lot of pickpocketing of Cliff and whatnot. He was solid. He was strong when he had the ball, and that was very important. Mawot Mag, 3 rebounds, 2 points. Again, I thought he was doing some of the glue stuff you don't see all the time, but he was a presence in there. The guys you need to be your scorers if you're going to have a solid outing. Mulcahy, 16 points. Cliff, 12 points. Cam Spencer, 14 points. And then you had Hyatt with 8, Simpson with 5 points, 1 rebound, and Simpson hit a very timely 3, which helped to stymie, a little bit of a run that Purdue hoped to get on towards the end of that first half. So you see guys playing their roles, and even when Simpson wasn't scoring, for instance, he was playing tough D. He was giving Purdue something to think about on the perimeter, and he was facilitating the offense. This is what you need. But Cam Spencer, I've been talking about him since early in the year. And I've been saying that if Cam Spencer can stay consistent against top-tier competition or against conference foes, we are going to have a better season if Cam Spencer can do that. And we saw him do it against Ohio State on the road, and now we just saw him do it again. And when we're talking about players fitting into their roles, and we're talking about players doing things that you expect them to do and that you want them to do, it's funny, I was just at the Coppin State game with my buddy last Friday. We were literally sitting in the bleacher seats where I reside. And we're watching the game, and, that was a blowout as expected, so we had some time to discuss the team and what needs to happen. And one of the things I said to him, and he agreed with, was Paul Mulcahy, right? He's a glue guy, yes. He's a facilitator. He's the quarterback of the offense, yes. He's a leader on the court as a captain, yes. But in terms of offensive play, I said to my buddy, I said, one of the things that I think this team really needs to do, and you saw it last season when we went on that stretch where we really just needed to string together a bunch of wins against a bunch of good teams in the Big Ten. And Mulcahy and Cliff started getting that 2-man game going a lot. And I said, we need Mulcahy when times get crazy. You've seen it with this team before, and you almost started to feel it towards the end of the second half of this game. You almost started to feel that, and it's another thing, which it's crazy. You can't blame it on anything. It's just luck, but it seems to constantly happen to Rutgers. But I bet if you turned on another team, they would say the same thing. It just feels like it just happens to Rutgers. But it seems like whenever a team, even if they're shooting terribly from the field, even if they're shooting a low 3-point field goal percentage, it seems like no matter what, when they're low in the shot clock and they have to just hoist up a shot, they always sink it, and it just always goes down. And you saw Purdue starting to sink some shots, and you saw Edey starting to take it to the Knights down low. Edey playing really tough down low, slamming the ball, getting a lot of foul calls going his way. So he has a lot of and one opportunities. You see Rutgers backing off a little bit because they're in foul trouble. And you start to feel, if you're a Knights fan, you start to feel a little bit of weird momentum, and you start to think, here we go. We're throwing some out-of-control layups up. We're missing some shots. Our shot selection is not great right now. I'm not loving it. And on the other end of the court, here comes Purdue scoring when they need to. And you almost feel like, oh no, is this going to be Miami part 2? But luckily, and perhaps not luckily, but more strategically, and this is what I'm talking about, back to my point about Mulcahy, I said to my buddy, look, when we get into games late in the game, and we start feeling that sense of out of control, that out of control feeling where we're throwing up layups, we're rushing to the hoop, we're getting sloppy, and our shot selection is suffering. We're pressing too much because we're trying to withstand the momentum and a run of an adversary. I said we've really got to get the ball to Paul Mulcahy And he's got to do that thing I called it. I said, get in the post. But I said, he's got to be in the post. But I do that thing where he gets the ball and he backs everybody up, methodically backs them up toward the hoop. And he's a good ball handler, and he's a big guy. He's a big guard. And he's usually able to back them up. And the reason I said is it slows it down. It lets everybody collect themselves, and it facilitates, because Paul is very good down there. And Paul will hit a lot of his shots with his really nice post moves. He will hit a lot of those, mid-range jumpers, but also he'll be able to draw enough attention if he does it a few times to kick the ball back out and find shooters. And I said it to my buddy at Coppin State, he said, yeah, you know what, I agree. And if you watch tonight's game, one of the things the Scarlet Knights did when you started to feel some of that Purdue momentum and you started to feel that end of the game stuff was Paul was able to continually get the ball, bring it down low, methodically bring it down low, slow everything down, and get a more quality shot. And then, while Paul's doing that, and that's his role, and that's his job, you have Cam Spencer, who we brought in to be the lights-out shooter, who is and can be a lights-out shooter, who perhaps just needed to adjust. Some things you could look at with Cam and say, well, he just needed to adjust. He had to settle down with the nerves and whatnot. Other things you can look at with Cam would be perhaps some of these quicker perimeter teams might give him a little more trouble. And I've said this in the past. Our conference is not necessarily a conference loaded with quick perimeter players like some other conferences are. And that's why you see when the Big Ten goes out of conference, they sometimes struggle. It's because I think it's a little quicker on the perimeter at some of these out-of-conference teams, in contrast to how the Big Ten plays basketball and our style of play. So it's either maybe a combination of both. Cam needed to settle down and just find his rhythm and find his confidence. And also he may, like Rutgers does, perhaps, match up better in conference. And that's what we build our team for, obviously, is to be formidable in conference. Either way, you're wondering all early in the season, well, who's going to be the person? Who's going to be the guy that's going to get the ball late in the game? And with Gio and Ron gone, you really had that question. And you think it might be Hyatt sometimes. McConnell shot his shot in one of the games, and it hadn't worked out the way we really wanted over the past several games. And there was a lot of complaints from fans with the inbounds in Ohio State that they, went to McConnell instead of going to Cam. But this game shows you, and it may switch game to game. I think this is the type of team where the game plan, who plays, who gets the ball, is going to be matchup dependent, it makes perfect sense for this team and the way it's structured. But in this particular game, we did find a way to get it to our best shooter, which is Cam Spencer. And the moment was not too big for him at all. Now, that's too big. This is huge. This is huge going forward, because Cam Spencer presumably is going to be on this team for this year and next year, 2 more years. And that's 2 Big Ten road games. Big Ten road games, 2 of them, where Cam Spencer was on his game and unfazed by the moment or the crowd. That is huge. Maybe he feeds off the opposing crowds. I don't know. But that's 2 games where he was balling. And on that last shot, they found a way to get it to Cam, and poised, calm, cool, collected. He lets the guy fly by him, finds a nice footing that he likes, and bam, drains that 3-pointer. And then what I liked is we dropped back, we played defense. We didn't try to foul, we didn't try anything cute. We just went right back into defense because we'd been playing good defense all year. And quite frankly, this is a defensive team. This is a defensive team. And if we're going to win games late in the game, you got to just rely on your defense, your normal defense, to just stop teams, because that's what you do best. You try to get cute, you try to play the game, the foul game, etc. I understand it's situational, situation dependent, but you got to play straight up defense, and that's what Rutgers did, and that was a big thing to do. So, you got to be excited about this team. And you got to be excited about this win. But nothing gets easy in this conference, and it's another challenge coming Thursday as, the Terps, Maryland comes to town. Maryland comes to Piscataway on Thursday. I'll be there. I hope many of you were there. Let's get loud. Let's get crazy. Our guys need us. But this is huge this early in the season because it puts to bed one of the bugaboos that are normally on our resume towards the end of the year, or dare I say not on our resume, which is, okay, well, where was your quality road win or your quality neutral site win? We got that out of the way now. Should have been put out of the way with Ohio State. That's another story we already talked about. But we put it to bed with Purdue. So that's a good thing, too. Like I said, guys, if you haven't done so yet, smash subscribe, smash the like button. One other thing I will say, too, is Pike went deep into the rotation in this game. You had to have Jalen Miller in there at some point, and he was playing tough D. At one point, which I thought was possible and I thought was matchup dependent, you saw a guy like Dean Reber, who hadn't been getting a lot of minutes, and Woolfolk, for good reason, had been taking a lot of his minutes. But you saw Dean have to go in due to foul trouble and other things, but you had Dean in there at the 4 with Cliff on the floor at the same time. I don't think we're going to see that all the time, but there were people who said we would never see it. I disagreed. When you're playing teams that are bigger, that you have a matchup advantage, or at least you can match up adequately with Dean and Cliff on the floor at the same time, bigger teams that aren't as quick and out playing the perimeter players at the 4, you're more able to play these guys together. And I think it was just a small stretch, but it allows some flexibility. So the fact, too, that Pike was able to go so deep into his bench and play everybody on the road against the number 1 team in the nation and a Big Ten conference foe is a great aspect and point of discussion for this program, because that means that our depth, we are down to our 3rd guys at some positions, and they can get quality minutes and quality games, and you don't have to worry about the entire thing slipping away in those moments. That is absolutely huge, and it speaks a ton to the recruiting, the development, and just where the program is in general. So great game, and this is just a glimpse of what this team can be if they consistently play that way as a team where every player is fulfilling his respective role. This is how far you can get. So smash subscribe if you haven't yet. I'll talk to you soon. I will see all of you guys on Thursday. Go Knights.